El Paso, Texas piques the imagination. It's a place on the fringes of America, a community that seems to share more with its Mexican neighbors than it does with cities like New York or Los Angeles. In this video, I set out to discover two of its personalities that cast their shadows over this border town in a time when the threat of violence was a real issue. Our first stop was Rose's Cantina, the watering hole made famous by country music singer Marty Robbins, and now forever enshrined as part of the El Paso experience. I grew up on the songs of Marty Robbins, listening over my father's 8-track player to the minstrel quality of Robbins' narratives. Story goes that Robbins was passing through West Texas on his way to Phoenix when he stopped at the bar, which would inspire him to write a Western ballad about a gunfighter and a woman named Felina, finishing it 2 hours later when reaching Deming, New Mexico by car. He may not have known it at the time, but Deming held a special relationship to El Paso, since it was here that George Scarborough was buried, the man who killed John Selman Sr., the man who killed infamous outlaw John Wesley Hardin.
Out in the West Texas, town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican girl. I fell in love with a Mexican girl. You're singing right now. And we made it. We're in Rose's Cantina.
So we thought the place was closed, but the lady that was still here, we checked on inside, tapping on the window. She was nice enough to let us come in and have some beers.
Yo voy a cantar esta canción, yo voy a cantar esta canción para mi gente. Con una pasión tan fuerte. Ay, 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 ay. Ahora sigo cantando y sigo gozando. Yo sigo cantando y sigo gozando.
So imagine, if you will, a street in the 1880s. Didn't look anything like this. I'm walking down East El Paso Street right now in El Paso, Texas. And what happened here in the 1880s probably stunned the population, but none more so than Dallas Stoudemire. Right behind me is what was originally the Globe Restaurant. And as Dallas had only been 3 days on the job as city marshal here in El Paso, a fight broke out. That fight was along this road. He heard gunshots as he was sitting eating a steak dinner. And as the story goes, he pulled out his two .44 Smith & Wessons and came running out onto the street. As he did so, he noticed that the fight had ensued. There had been some cattle theft and some accusations of dead vaqueros, and there was some bad blood going on. And so Dallas came out to the street and saw the shooting, and he himself started shooting as well. Well, it became known as the 4 dead in 5 seconds fight. Dallas accidentally killed an innocent Mexican bystander, and then turned his attention to the real culprits. Those culprits were firing at one another, and Dallas returned fire, killing 2 of them. And eventually, the body count made it to 4. Dallas was responsible for 3 of those deaths, and he's forever enshrined in the local folklore and history of this city.
Yo voy a cantar esta canción, yo voy a cantar esta canción para mi gente. Con una pasión tan fuerte. Ay, 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 ay. Ahora sigo cantando y sigo gozando. Yo sigo cantando y sigo gozando.
Interestingly enough, El Paso has another tie to great names from the Old West. It was at the Coney Island Saloon in El Paso, owned by Tom Powers, where Walter Noble Burns, a journalist from the East, found out about Billy the Kid, seeing a pistol that hung over the bar and attributed to Pat Garrett as the gun that killed Billy. By the time Burns came to El Paso in the early 1900s, Billy the Kid was nearly lost to local legend. But Burns became so enraptured by the story told by Powers that he began an investigation that helped to reignite interest in the legend of the Kid, and was likely responsible for turning him into a folk icon and hero. By the 1870s, El Paso had earned a reputation as a true Wild West town, known to locals as the six-shooter capital. Throngs of white and Hispanic settlers descended upon the city to claim their fortune, made possible by the Southern Pacific, Texas and Pacific, and Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe railroads, all which were established by the 1880s. There was prostitution, gambling, and men like John Wesley Hardin and Dallas Stoudemire became among its most notable figures of that era.
So this graveyard, this cemetery, looks like it's straight out of a movie. It really is something that looks like it got stuck in time, and probably hasn't changed much from the time there were active interments here. It's like the land that time forgot. Well, this, folks, might just be the most Texas thing I've ever seen in Texas. John Wesley Hardin's grave. And you gotta like the six-shooters there at the top. What do we know about John Wesley Hardin? Well, we know a lot. We know he wasn't shy about writing about his life and his exploits. A lot of scholars believe that much of his life story is embellished. With the plus 40 people that he shot and killed, he said he shot numerous Mexicans and that it was so many he couldn't keep count. Whether that was true, we don't really know. But Hardin probably was one of the worst of the outlaws. Lived up to his Texas reputation. It was said that at one point in Abilene, he could have come up against Wild Bill Hickok. He was staying in a boarding house. He shot a man for snoring. But he wasn't going to take out Hickok. He had respect for him, even though he was a Yankee, and he left town later. So the two of them never had any kind of confrontation. But Hardin did a lot of stuff. He went back and forth from the Mexican-American border, stealing cattle in the early days. And so he remains in the annals of Wild West history as being one of the baddest dudes, and lived up to his reputation. think he carried a .38 Colt Lightning, the same gun that Doc Holliday used. And this is Concordia Cemetery here in El Paso. Not many people here, just myself and my brother, and visiting this grave. They keep it under lock and key, so there's no funny business. But it's definitely worth your while if you're out here. Come check out the grave. You don't necessarily have to pay your respects, but it's interesting to see how history was made out here in the Wild West. So John Henry Selman, the man responsible for killing the most notorious outlaw in Wild West history, none other than John Wesley Hardin. And that incident took place at the Acme Saloon. And what had happened was Hardin and John Selman's son, John Selman Jr., got into it. And eventually his father intervened, the man buried right here, and ended John Wesley's life. All right, so we took a little detour. We're actually passing through Deming, Arizona. Hope that's how you pronounce it. This is the final resting place of one George A. Scarborough. He was the man who killed John Selman, who killed John Wesley Hardin. And he was part of the International Order of Oddfellows, and you can tell because there's this little 3-chain link here. And I think it stands for friendship, loyalty, and trust. And his headstone reads here, "Gone but not forgotten."
And then he himself was killed by Kid Curry, who ran with Butch Cassidy and the Wild Bunch. Selman was seeking to run down cattle rustlers, got into a gunfight, was shot in the leg by Kid Curry, or they think it was Kid Curry.
Not Selman, Scarborough.
Scarborough, and
Yeah.
then died 4 days later.
Oh, wow. And over here, it's the same thing as on the other side, but it's hard to see because of the position of the sun right now. So guys, this is why you have to travel with Trey, because if you want obscurity, man, I've got your obscurity covered. Dead cowboys, dead figures from the Old West that don't involve the name The Kid, and I've got it covered for you.
On February 17, 1894, having paid his debt to society, John Wesley Hardin was released from the penitentiary and hung out his shingle in El Paso, Texas. Here he became a successful and respected attorney, and it looked as if though the former bad man and convict had a brilliant future ahead of him. Unfortunately, it wasn't in the cards for Hardin to stay on the right side of the law. His excessive drinking, his fondness for bad company led to a grave mistake. He was instrumental in engineering the murder of an El Paso citizen.